Hi, and welcome to another edition of Conservation Conversations. My name is Matthias Jarvegren. I'm a Utility Services Advisor with Clallam County PUD. And for this episode, we were thinking we're going to walk you through the steps of the basics of an energy audit. So with us today, we have Dave, who's going to let us into his house and let us have a little look and see if we have any recommendations we can come up with to help improve the energy efficiency of his home.
Okay.
So one of the easiest things to look for is to look at the windows. It's not necessarily the most cost-effective thing or the first thing you do, but it's pretty straightforward to see what kind of windows you have. And we noticed here on your first floor that you have a dual pane windows with aluminum frames, and most of the heat loss from a window comes from the frame. So the fact that you have aluminum frames, which is a great conductor of heat and can be a good source of heat loss for your house. You really should look at changing out the windows on the bottom floor of your home as well. But as we walked out back to look at the windows, I noticed that on the top floor, if we go upstairs, you've already changed out some of the windows. So I noticed here on the windows that you already have changed out, that they have vinyl frames in them, and that's really what you should try to install in your home. Dual pane windows with a vinyl frame and a low E coating. And most of those specifications the contractor will take care of for you when you select to participate in our incentive program to change out your windows. But I would really recommend that you go through your whole house and ensure that all of your windows are of this type with the vinyl frames. So then let's move on and look at maybe your heating system. So then looking at your heating system, Dave, I noticed that you have an electric furnace which is then hooked up to a ductwork. And any type of heating system, be it a heat pump or an electric furnace that utilize the ductwork, it's important to have the ducts sealed and very tight. Now in your case, because this is a basement home, all the ductwork are inside of the home. So if the ducts happen to leak, they would leak into the house. So in your situation, it is not really of a great concern. But most homes, particularly in our area, have the ductwork throughout the crawl space or up in the attic, in which case duct sealing is an absolutely critical thing to do, because any leaks that you have in the duct system would then be into an unconditioned space where we really don't want the heat to go. Currently at Clallam County PUD we have a rebate program that can help cover essentially the full cost of a duct sealing job. So I would urge any of you who are watching this to contact your local Clallam County PUD to get a list of the participating installers to have your ducts tested and sealed. Next thing, anytime you have a central heating system, electric furnace or heat pump, they have a filter. The filter is primarily there really to protect the fan and the internal workings of the heating system. But most people really do not change the filter often enough. And as I look in here, I notice a clean filter, which indicates to me that you do change your filter regularly, which is it's nice to see. For you out there who are watching, in general, what we would recommend is that you change this filter about once a month. And if you find that the filter is clean when you do once a month, you can probably back off and do it every other month. But it's a really good thing to do to really expand the life of the heating system and to help ensure some better indoor air quality in your home. Because you have an electric furnace, and a recommendation for you to do would be to convert this to a heat pump. And it's not an entirely inexpensive thing to do. It probably costs around $6,000 or so to hook up a heat pump to an existing heating system. But out here in the peninsula where the weather is fairly mild, a heat pump is by far the most efficient way to heat a home. So the next thing we're going to look at here then is the insulation. And since this is has a basement house, it doesn't have a crawl space insulation per se to look at. So we're just going to look in the attic here for now. And as I crawl up the hatch and look here, I can see right away that this is a pretty well insulated attic here. I'm trying to take a picture on my hand to illustrate the depth of insulation. And what they have here is about 1.5 feet of the rock wool that's on the other side of the fiberglass insulation here, which is quite adequate, and I'm quite satisfied to see. If you have anything less than about 1 foot of insulation, you should contact your local utility company and talk to them about getting your attic insulated, because insulation is probably the easiest and quickest way to save energy and save money on your power bills. So next we're going to look at some air sealing opportunities, and probably the first place to look is underneath the sinks where the plumbing penetrations are. It can be kind of hard for a plumber to get the fittings to fit just right where the drywall goes through, so they like to put in a hole that's considerably larger than than the water pipe that goes in, and hence we're left with typically fairly large holes in the drywall underneath the sinks. And here's a good example that you can see underneath here, where there's quite a bit of hole around the plumbing penetration, and those can be filled out, plugged up with some kind of expanding foam. I should add a note of caution that you have to be careful with expanding foam so you don't put too much in there, because it is expanding, and if you get lots in there you can break things. But that is certainly an area you'd want to plug up and make sure it's well air sealed. Next we'll move on to the electrical switches, which is another area that is a great place to look for air sealing opportunities. So now we moved over to this electrical switch here, and of course, because it is an electrical switch, you have to be very careful not to touch anything, because we don't want anybody to get hurt. But just like with the plumbing penetrations, it can sometimes be hard to get things to fit right, so they cut the holes larger than the electrical box that is behind here. And so as we take the switch off, oops, I'll get that screw in a second. You can see back here that it's a rather large hole around the electrical switch that should be sealed up. If it's a very small crack, a little bit of caulk can do the job. Otherwise, at your local hardware store, they come with the switch covers, gaskets. So it's little rubberized gaskets that you put inside of the switch. I suppose I could have brought one with me to illustrate, but you put the gasket in the switch plate and you just return it, and it'll create a tight seal around to eliminate the leaks that you have around the electrical sockets. And you really should look at the inside sockets as well, because you'll be really surprised where the air leaks into your house. So next we're going to be looking at some of the appliances, and we're going to start back here in the utility room again, where we just looked at the furnace. And here we have the water heater. And the thing with the water heater is it doesn't really make financial sense to change it out just because, but rather when you do need to replace your water heater, it really makes a lot of sense to buy the most energy efficient unit that you can afford. I do notice here though that the water pipes are not insulated, which might not be such a big deal because the water heater inside of the conditioned space, so any heat loss from the hot water heater will warm the house. But really all water pipes coming out of and into the water heater should be insulated, because you'd be really surprised to note that actually even the incoming cold water pipe is typically warm, because the warm water in the tank will tend to rise up the pipe, and you have some heat loss through those as well. Some years ago, the utilities, we used to recommend that people put insulating blankets around the water heater. Is nothing that we recommend anymore. That will essentially void the warranty of most water heaters that are sold today. So rather, when it is time to change your water heater, get the most energy efficient unit that you can get your hands on, and make sure you get your utility rebate while you're doing it. So now let's move on to the refrigerator freezer. To the freezer. And I often not go into the kitchen for this case, because Dave, the homeowner here, he has recently remodeled the kitchen. Looks really nice, and it's not as interesting when you have really new equipment. For me, when we're doing an energy audit, the really interesting part comes when we find the older equipment. And I notice here that the freezer here in the garage is rather old, and the refrigerator and the freezer are one of the largest energy using appliances that you have. And typically a refrigerator or freezer that's older than 10 years old really should be replaced. And anytime you're looking to replace your appliances, you should really look for the Energy Star logo. It's a program the federal government have put together to help consumers identify more energy efficient equipment. Another interesting note with this unit here in the garage is, my guess is that it used to be in the kitchen, and part of the problem when we run incentive programs is we'll pay a rebate for folks to buy a new refrigerator or freezer, but then the old unit, instead of being put offline and no longer used, it moves into the garage to store meat or fish from the hunting season, or just simply become the beer fridge. And we would prefer that when you do replace your appliances, you take them offline, and a lot of the retailers in the area will offer to pick up the old appliances when you buy a new one. So that is what we recommend that you do when you do remodel. So then to talk about lighting, I've noticed when I walk through your house, Dave, that most of the lighting is compact fluorescent lighting, which is exciting to see. I'm glad to see that you're already making a step to use energy efficient lighting. But when I was in the garage here, I noticed that you still have one incandescent lamp, and certainly that's not an issue. We don't want to tell you to change out all your lights if you don't want to. But this is the type of lighting that we used to use, and a much more energy efficient option is to use the compact fluorescent lamps I'm referring to, and we have an example up there on the other side in the garage here. So we recommend to all of our customers to start using compact fluorescent lights for all of the lighting needs in their homes. They're available in all sorts of wattages and types and varieties nowadays, and they've really come a long way from the first compact fluorescent lamps that came out on the market some 10 years. So that concludes our little short energy audit. So thank you, Dave. I want to point out that, of course, this short little audit doesn't really cover all of the different situations that you might run into. Each house typically has its own peculiarities that you need to consider. And also, I want to point out that anytime you plan to do any major purchases dealing with insulation, windows, heating systems, or your appliances, that you should contact your local utility to find out what kind of rebates and incentives that we have to help cover some of the cost of those items. You can either call our offices and talk to our friendly staff, or go yourself to look on our website.